So my name's Sam, and I work at CAVA. I'm the Events and Communications Officer. So today I'm just going to be on hand for any tech issues and the running of today's fair. So if you have any tech issues, please just leave a comment in that chat box, and I'll try and help you as quickly as we can. Other than that, if you have any questions about the presentations or what you've learnt, please do leave a message in the chat box, and Charlie or Ben or myself can get back to those either during the presentations or at the end of the presentations. So if you just leave any comments like that in the chat box. Lovely. Okay, Charlie, I'm going to start sharing your presentation, and then I'm going to disappear from here and then take it away. Okay.
Thank you, Sam, and good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can all hear me clearly and see me clearly. So I've been asked today to talk you through kind of the UCAS process. So I will be guiding you through what's expected when if you decide to apply to higher education, talking you through the role that UCAS plays, the support that we can offer you as students considering making applications. I'll be signposting you to lots of resources and giving you some hints and tips as well about writing strong personal statements, focusing on that as well. The presentation I use today, I will make a copy available to you after the session. So I'll share it with Sam and she can share it with you. During the session, during the presentation, there is lots of links to resources as well. So please feel free to use these as you need to. It was worth just noting at the moment we are not sort of planning at UCAS to change anything that I sort of talk about today. However, with the pandemic and everything that goes on, there are the caveat just needs to be that everything is accurate at the point of delivery today, but things can change. And everything is subject to change, but we're not expecting anything to wildly change from what I discuss during the session today. So I always think it's worthwhile when doing sessions such as these to just outline exactly who UCAS is at the start of the session, just to make you aware of our role and how we can support you. So UCAS is an independent charity which is there to run the application service for higher education, and that's our kind of main purpose. You probably, if you've heard of UCAS before, that's probably what you've heard about in terms of UCAS. In terms of sort of the application, you might have heard of the personal statement, which I said I'll talk about as well during the session. Alongside though running the application, what we also aim to do is provide information, advice and support to people applying through UCAS, making them or arming them with the information that they need when making an application. So we want people to make an informed decision, whether that be applying for HE, whether that be going on to do an apprenticeship or any other route that they might follow after kind of leaving college or school. It's important to say that UCAS, we would never recommend to a student what course they should be applying for, nor we would tell them which university or college they should be thinking about. But I said what we're aiming to do is provide you with information and guidance to support that informed decision making. I think it's also crucial to say that we don't make any decisions. So we don't work, we work for, as an independent charity, we don't work for the universities. Universities will make their own decisions, which they will communicate through our systems. So we're not also responsible for any kind of student finance. I'm sure Ben will talk you through that in his section after I finished. So if you do decide to make an application to higher education, you're doing it through UCAS, there's kind of 4 distinct sort of stages that you'll go through as an applicant making an application. The first one is research, and researching the right options which are available to you is really, fundamentally, I think, the most important part of the application process. Thorough, effective research will lead you to making an informed decision, making a right choice for you, enable you to write a strong application, strong personal statement, one which is focused and is a good representation of what you're trying to do. I'm going to talk briefly about the application, but then, as I said, I'm also going to talk in a bit more detail about the personal statement, give you some hints and tips around writing a strong statement, and try and arm you with some tools to facilitate strong statements. And I'll also briefly outline what happens after you've submitted your application in terms of decisions that are made and then responses that you need to make as a student. But I wanted to focus, first of all, just on research. And as I said, it's so important that proper research is undertaken when deciding your next steps, whether that be higher education, whether that be full-time employment, apprenticeships, or anything else. Now, with research, it's difficult to know exactly what you want to do next, and it's not an easy decision to make. But the more research that you do, the more effective the research is that you carry out, the more kind of information you'll have to make a decision which suits your strengths, your needs, and everything that you need to consider. And sometimes research can be overlooked as part of the application process, but if you do proper research, the rest of the application will fall into line. Now, before I get into kind of some practical tips around research writing, it's worth, I think, just doing this little exercise and a little activity. Because of the delay, I won't unfortunately be able to get you guys to do some interactions, but just hypothetically for a moment, consider that, maybe at Ucas we could give you a free holiday. Disclaimer, we obviously can't, but we could give you a free holiday to anybody watching this presentation today. But before we could decide who to give the holiday to, we need to have a consensus of who wants to go where. Your two options are the Cardiff or the Caribbean. Now, taking a punt in the dark, I would assume most people would choose a free holiday to the Caribbean as opposed to a free holiday to Cardiff. Now, why am I why is this relevant? Now, what I'm going to do now is give you a little bit more information to arm you or to support you in this decision making. So imagine, actually, if you've chosen the free holiday to Cardiff, you would be able to go with a group of friends. You'd be treated like rock stars. You'd all be given spending money. You'd stay in the best hotel in Cardiff, and you would have a brilliant weekend. But if you'd chosen the Caribbean option, actually what you're going to be doing is you're going to be doing hard graft. You're going to be doing manual labor. You're going to be sleeping in kind of a very basic tent. It's going to be hurricane season. It's going to be really, really tricky for you to have the experience you probably expected. Now, why am I talking about this? Why is the bloke from Ucas talking about free holidays? Well, actually, what I'm trying to do is just support you and can encourage you to be critical in your evaluations when you're doing your research, making sure that when you're finding out options which are right for you, you're doing the necessary research to find out what you need to. Lots of universities now will use clever ways to recruit students, to attract students, which is perfectly fair and reasonable. And we're not saying they shouldn't do this, but you as an individual student need to take responsibility for your own decisions, your own choices, and make sure that you are choosing courses and choices in a kind of fair and reasonable way, and you're choosing courses for the right reasons. So just because you're being offered a discount on accommodation, or maybe you're being offered some spending money to spend in the students' union, whatever it might be, that shouldn't influence the decision that you make when you choose your higher education course. So at Ucas, there are we run the application service across the 4 countries of the UK, and we operate with approximately 350 course providers. At those 350 providers, there's a huge range of different courses available, approximately about 40,000 different courses to choose from. So it's really, really important. As part of the decision-making process, you're thinking about the right options for you, you're choosing the right courses, you're thinking about all of the different factors which you need to be considering. I'm going to go through some of these now as part of this. On our website, ucas.com, there's something called the Ucas Hub. Now, the Ucas Hub is a great place for you to start researching your choices. In the Hub, you're able to create a profile, you're able to search different course options, you're able to save information, you're able to view personalized information. And we know at Ucas that people who use the Hub, or who've been using the Hub over the last couple of years, have been able to do so in a way that has kind of broadened their horizons, it's supported them in their decision making, and has enabled students to discover choices which they perhaps wouldn't have thought of before. You will also make your application through the Hub, which I'll go on to talk about in detail in a moment, but you should also be using the Hub to do your research. So you can find not only course information, but you can also find information about specific subjects. What does a subject lead on to after graduation? You can find information about graduate employability rates. You can find information about university open days. So the Hub is a centralized place for you to do all of the research that you need to do. It's a great tool. I really recommend, even if you're not definitely going to go to higher education, sign up for the Hub. Through the Hub, you can find information about apprenticeships and jobs as well. So it's not just higher education. So use the Hub. Spend an hour or so at some point this week just going through it, familiarising yourself with what's there, and will really support you to make an application which is as strong as it can be. Through the Hub, I just wanted to highlight a new tool which we released only this week. So it's called the Career Compass. And basically what it does is we ask you about 30 different questions. We get a bit of information about your personality, your interests, and then what we'll do is we can suggest specific careers which are relevant to your interests, but then crucially link that back to the personality quiz and your careers. And so when you're thinking about your course, you're not only just thinking about what you're going to study, you're also thinking slightly longer term as well. So the Career Compass is a great tool for anyone who's unsure about their next steps. It's a great way for you to kind of sort of broaden horizons, think about different things that are available to you. It's by no means is it easy to make an application to decide what you want to do next. So this Career Compass is just one tool which we have available to you to support you in your next steps. Alongside the Ucas Hub, we also have a number of other resources which I would recommend you kind of engage with it and have a look at. So on our website, through the Hub, also separately, we have something called the Accommodation Search. So the Accommodation Search, as the name suggests, allows you to find different accommodation options available across universities. Not only the university-owned stuff, but also the privately owned stuff. So it's a great range, and it's a great way for you to kind of think about not only what you're going to be studying, but where you're going to be living whilst you're doing that. I'd also urge you to follow us on Facebook and on our other social media channels. We do lots of live stuff on there, lots of content with university staff, with admissions staff, with teachers and people and tutors from colleges. So do, would absolutely recommend you follow us on Facebook to get involved with that. And on, as well as our Facebook Lives, we also have something called the Hub Live. So in the Hub, once you've created an account, we do about a couple of sessions a month called Hub Lives. Again, talking with experts about things which are relevant to your application, giving you hints and tips right there throughout the application process. I talked about it briefly already, and I'll talk about it more when I come to talking about personal statements. But just thinking about why you're doing research. Yes, obviously you're doing it to decide where to apply for. And what course you want to study, but also what you need to do, what you need to have in the back of your mind when you're doing research is that you, as part of your research, you need to be collecting evidence which you can use in your application to support, you're hopefully receiving offers from your choices. So in terms of evidence, it can be anything that you want to include. It could be you went to an open day. It could be that you came to an event like this today and you learned something you didn't know, and that inspired you to go on and do something else. But what you need to be thinking in the back of your mind is, whilst you're writing your application, you need to provide evidence to support your application. So this can come from work experience. It can come from a newspaper article that you've read, a TED talk that you've watched, podcast, anything at all which is relevant to the course. And the more evidence that you have in your application, the stronger it's going to be. And ultimately, the more offers you're likely to receive if you can demonstrate that you've got evidence to back up your application. So I will talk a bit more about evidence when I come on to the personal statement in a moment. But now I just wanted to focus briefly on or explain kind of the application process, what you guys will need to do to make an application. So the application is done all via the Ucas Hub. So you go onto ucas.com if you haven't done so already, create your Hub account, through which you'll then be able to create your application and send it off to your chosen choices. You are able to have a maximum of 5 choices on your application. Now, a choice is a course at a course provider, so that could be, often students will apply for the same course at 5 separate universities or colleges. You don't have to do that. If you only want to apply to one, that's okay. If you want to apply for a couple, that's fine. You can submit an application. If you've only used a couple of choices, you are then able to kind of top up your application up to 5 choices if you wanted to. The application is really, really flexible, with the exception of the restrictions, which you can see there on screen. So students who are looking to apply for medicine, veterinary courses or dentistry courses can only have 4 of these choices listed on their application. The reason for this simply being that these courses are highly sort of selective and competitive, and the thought process being that if you can have a 5th choice as a backup choice, just in case you don't get offers, that might support you. Now that 5th choice might be related to the subject. It might be something like biomedical sciences. It could be biology, for example, if you're thinking of medicine. It doesn't have to be. It can be any subject at all. If you're thinking of applying to either Oxford or Cambridge University, then it is only one or the other, not both. Simple reason for this is that, again, these are very selective and competitive courses to get places on. And yet the application processes for these places are kind of highly involved. You'll have lots of interviews and things to go through. So it's a kind of one or the other. Ucas, as mentioned right at the start, we are a registered charity, so we do charge a small fee for you to apply through us. If you're applying for one choice, you'll pay £22. If you're applying for multiple choices, you'll pay £26.50. £26.50 is the maximum amount that you'll pay to us in the course of one application year. Now, the last 2 points on the screen here about equal consideration and invisibility are probably the two most important points I'll make today. So really important that you understand that the application process operates around some key dates and some key deadlines, which I'm going to go over on the next slide. And if you are working towards these deadlines and you get your applications in on or before these dates, the universities will guarantee they'll consider your application alongside all other applications they receive during this cycle. So equal consideration, really, really important. Apply by these dates, you're guaranteed to be considered by your chosen choices. And then invisibility, as the name suggests, basically says if you apply to multiple universities or colleges, they won't know where else you've applied to, and therefore won't have any bearing on any decisions received on your application. Okay, so the dates then, they're really important. You kind of get in your head now when you're thinking about your applications are kind of listed on screen. So the application cycle for the 2022 actually opened back in May, okay, but students are not able to start their applications till the beginning of September. From September, students have been able to submit, and the first deadline to be aware of is the 15th of October deadline. These are courses at Oxford and Cambridge, and those courses in medicine, dentistry and veterinary sciences. If you're not sure what the deadline is for your course that you're considering, the easiest way to check is go onto the Ucas Hub, search for your courses, and on there it will give you the date by which you should apply. The vast majority of courses use the application date of the 26th of January as the date by which you need to submit your application in. It's important to note that in order to submit your application, you will need to have a completed reference attached to your application. Now, if you are applying through the college that you're doing your access courses on, it might be that they're going to do the reference for you. So you need to be working with the tutors at the college to ensure you're up to speed of what's required by you by when. Again, if you're unsure whether the course you have has a January deadline or an October deadline, the easiest way to check is going onto the Ucas website, looking in the Ucas Hub, and it will tell you very clearly what you need to do and by when. It's important to note that all deadlines have the 6 o'clock cutoff. So if you do submit an application at 1 minute past 6, it will technically be classed as late. So don't leave it to the last minute. Make sure you get your application in as early as possible. Now, after the January deadline, you are able to apply right up until the 30th of June with choices listed on your application. However, we do recommend that if you are going to apply after this January date, that you do check first with your choices before you apply to check whether they are happy to receive a late application from you or not. Now, you can see the disclaimer about all dates are subject to change. As I sit here today, there are no plans to change any of these dates. However, last year, because of the lockdowns and all of the changes and challenges that posed, we did have to change the dates slightly. But as we sit here today, no intention to change any of the dates that we've got listed on screen. What I would say is, if you don't already, as I mentioned, follow us on Facebook or social media platforms, and any changes that we do make will be announced through there, as well as through our other ucas.com channels as well. So the application itself then, as I said, this is what it looks like when you get onto the hub. You can see the course searches here. you need to click on the application card to start it. You'll then be able to go through, and if you are applying from a school or a college, you are able to link your application using a buzzword. That basically allows tutors to be able to view your applications, support your application, and then crucially submit your application as well on your behalf. In terms of the individual sections, I'm going to cover that on the next slide, but I just wanted to give you kind of a visual representation of what the application looks like. So you can see at the top, you've got this like application status bar, and as you work through each section on your application, what you'll do is you'll see the profile completion percentage update. Once you get to 100%, then you're in a position to submit. Also, you need to add your choices. You need to go through and work through each section before you can submit your application. As I said, I'm going to now talk through the different sections, not in huge detail, but just give you an overview of what's expected and what you need to be doing on each one. So the personal details section sounds nice and straightforward. That sounds nice and simple, but actually, each year, about 10% of applications contain mistakes, errors, or omissions in this section. So it's important here that you're putting your full name details down, you're putting contact information down, you're putting the correct date of birth. If you don't put the correct information here, it won't necessarily get picked up straight away, but it can cause you issues later in the application sort of process if we haven't got, and universities don't have the relevant information for you. So do take the time to be accurate here. Make sure you're including everything that is, you need to. As you work through the application, each section has help text sort of built in, which explains exactly what's required from each one. So do look out for that. There's also videos within the application which explains what's required from you. With the personal details section, I just wanted to pull out the disability section. So in the disability section, every student has to complete this, either to say they have no disability or to provide information about the disability that they do have. Now, we've seen over the last 10 years a huge increase in students declaring mental health conditions, which is great, and we'd absolutely welcome students who do have mental health conditions to declare these at the point of application. This information isn't used and isn't shared with universities as part of the decision-making process, but the information is used to support you if you get a place at that university, to support you in getting settled at the university, but also helping you access kind of things like student services should you need them once you start your course. The contact and residency details, fairly straightforward. You just put down your information. The next section, the education section, again, this is a very important part of your application. Now, if you're taking an access course, you need to make sure that you add the access course as a pending qualification within the education section. You need to list the institution where you're taking it, so the college that you're taking the access course at, as well as the expected date of completion. What you need to do with qualifications, you either list qualifications that you have already achieved or qualifications that are pending. You need to list both. If you've had to resit qualifications, you need to put both attempts down in the education section. Moving on to the employment section next then. The employment section is for paid employment history only. If you haven't got paid employment, if you haven't done any, that's fine. You can leave this section blank if required. Nationality details, relatively straightforward. You just answer a series of questions. English language skills, again, relatively straightforward. The personal statement, I'm not going to talk about now, but I will be talking about it once I've gone through the next couple of slides. The choices section, okay, this is where you add your up to 5 choices. Within the choices section, if you're applying for a course where it's relevant, this is where you will have to disclose or answer questions about criminal background checks. So it will only be asked if it's relevant to your application. So courses like nursing, teaching, social work, those types of courses where you'll be interacting with children or vulnerable people. The reference is a big part of the application process. This is provided by either the school or college you're applying through, or you are able to ask somebody yourself to do the reference if you want to. The reference, though, needs to come back from somebody either from an educational background, or if you're in full-time employment, it can come from an employment background as well. The finance and funding section next. Again, Ben will be able to shed more light on this in the next section, but this basically enables us to collect a bit of information about your financial plans, which we share with Student Finance, but this isn't you applying for Student Finance. It's a separate process you'll need to complete. Once you have submitted your application, the universities and colleges will receive it. They will then make one of 3 decisions, depending on everything that they've considered. So they will look at your application in its entirety. They will look at your personal statement, your educational history, your reference, and they will then use that information to make an informed decision. They can make, as I said, one of 3 decisions. They can make you an unconditional offer. As the name suggests, this is one based on no conditions. Basically means if you accept it, you are going to be confirmed on that course or with that institution. Majority of people who are taking who are in the process of taking qualifications will receive a conditional offer. So a conditional offer basically is an offer based in conditions, in academic conditions. So if you're in the process of taking an access course, they will want you to achieve a certain, either pass the course or a certain grade in order to take up a place on that course. You may be made unsuccessful. That happens. If it does, it's not the end of the application journey. You are able to apply using up to 5 choices. If all of those 5 are unsuccessful, you are able to use something called Ucas Extra and Ucas Clearing. I'm not going to talk about those in detail today, but just have them in the back of your mind. Be aware that they are there as an option for you should you need them. As part of the application process, vast majority of students won't need to attend an interview, submit a portfolio of work, or take an additional admissions test. However, if you are required to do any of these things, you should understand this as part of your research that you do when deciding on what course to apply for. And it will, the individual university or college you apply to will communicate the details of these as part of your application process. So do look out for those if you are applying for courses where you think it might be applicable. Okay, so once you have received all decisions on your application, you will then be in a position to respond to those decisions. You are able to have a first choice and a second choice, and it's what we call a firm choice and an insurance choice. If you have to, if you are lucky enough to receive more than 2 offers, you will have to decline other offers you receive during the application process. So your firm choice then is your first choice. If you firmly accept a conditional offer, you are able to have a backup choice as an insurance. If you firmly accept an unconditional offer, you are not able to have an insurance choice though. If you are going to have an insurance choice, as it says there, it makes common sense to have the conditions of that insurance choice lower than the conditions of your firm, because if you miss the conditions of your firm, likely you'll miss the conditions of your insurance choice as well. If you do receive if more than 2 offers, you will have to decline those after having a firm and insurance. It's important to note here that you can't switch between your firm and insurance once you've got your results. So do take the time to consider these before you record your replies, and be aware that you don't have to sort of rush into making decisions. Wait until you have all the information you need before you make your response. Okay, so now I just wanted to talk briefly about personal statements. I might just check to see if there's any questions coming through before we kind of move on, change topic. Okay, so I can see there's comments coming through. So Corinne, yeah, we do have Instagram. Yeah, thanks. Sam's put the details in there as well. So Siobhan's asked about the education section. Do you put everything that you have studied or just the course you are doing now? So Siobhan, you need to put every formal qualification down that you have. So if you took GCSEs or any kind of level 2 qualifications, you should include those. And then any level 3 qualifications, so A-levels, BTECs, vocational qualifications should be included. You can also include in your education section any qualifications that you've got. Maybe if you've got a first aid qualification or a sports coaching qualification or anything like that can also be included if it's a formal recognised qualification. Okay, so moving on to personal statements then. Personal statements are a big part of the application process, and they are one part that we know students worry about a lot and can cause kind of stress and anxiety. So I'm going to try and over the next 10 minutes or so just give an outline of what personal statement is, how to approach it, and then give you some hints and tips to write a strong statement. So in your application, you have the different sections, one of which is the personal statement. The personal statement is a blank text box in which you have 4,000 characters in which you are able to kind of use to write an effective statement. You have one personal statement to cover all of your choices. So if you are applying for 5 different choices, that one statement needs to cover all 5. And the statement needs to support all of those choices in terms of their range of scope in terms of getting into them, in terms of entry requirements, but also if you are thinking about applying for different subjects, you need to make your personal statement work for all of those. I would recommend, if you are really thinking about very different subjects, you kind of speak to your choices before you apply to see how they'd like you to approach the statement. But with the statement, so you have 4,000 characters, which might sound like a lot, but remember it's 4,000 characters, not words, in which you are basically trying to sell yourself to the places you're applying to hopefully receive offers. In terms of the practicalities of it, you aren't able to have any kind of clever formatting, so don't kind of think too much about it. All you're focusing on is the language that you're using and kind of focusing on that. Don't worry about like formatting, size, anything like that. You are also not able to use anything more than a basic character, so comma, full stop, semicolon, hashtag, basically the only signs, so punctuation marks you can use. So don't worry about that too much. If you are worried about your spelling and grammar, I very recommend you write it in Word. Copy your statement across once you're happy with it. There is no built-in spelling or grammar check. Mistakes in your statement, particularly sort of obvious ones, could potentially count against you. Don't leave it to the last minute. We recommend you write it in Word. Once you're happy with it, copy it across, and then you'll go from there. So in terms of the statement, basically your personal statement is there in order for you to help receive an offer from the universities you've applied to. Universities are basically looking at personal statements to understand your motivation for applying for the course or courses you're applying for. They want to get to know you outside of your your academic achievements. They're basically using statements to decide who they'll make offers to. And as part of your statement, what you're looking to do is demonstrate you have the right skills, the right knowledge, the right experience that the universities and colleges are looking for. Big part of the statement, particularly if you're applying for vocational courses or courses that lead to a specific career, is you demonstrating you have understood what you're applying for. You understand the course, the demands of the course, you understand how the course is going to be taught, and you can kind of sort of use that to kind of really help yourself kind of differentiate from other people who are applying. Ultimately, when you're writing your statement, you need to be doing at all times one of these two things. You either need to be explaining why you're applying, or you need to be explaining why you're right for the course. Easiest way to do this is to provide evidence. So I talked briefly about evidence earlier. Evidence is absolutely crucial in effective personal statements. Evidence can really, add meats to the bones of your statement. It enables you to demonstrate you have the required skills, knowledge, and experience that universities are looking for. But evidence can be anything. It could be one of the things I suggested earlier. It could be, as I said, a TED talk. It could be a book that you've read off a university reading list. It could be a newspaper article that you read, which kind of made you interested in a particular subject, which led you on to do further research. It can be anything. There's no right or wrong, but you need to be using it effectively to basically make yourself attractive to the admissions tutors who are reviewing your application. So what I'm going to do now is go through a couple of do's, a couple of don'ts in terms of statements. So I'm going to suggest a bit of a structure which will help you do these things. So structure is absolutely really, really key. When you're writing a statement, if it's well structured, it's easier to read, it's easier to digest as the reader. And ultimately, a well-structured statement will kind of stick in the reader's mind longer than one that is just kind of not well structured, not well written. I think it's important to say before I go through a suggested structure that your personal statement is personal to you. You need to try and be as authentic as possible. You need to take your own ideas and shape it. But in terms of structure, one that I would suggest is basically breaking your statement down into 3 distinct chunks. Chunk 1, about 30%, is a strong opening paragraph which explains kind of your motivation for applying for the course or courses you're applying for. Maybe you want to talk here about any kind of career ambitions or further study ambitions you have linked to the course you want to apply for. The next sort of chunk of the statement, probably about 65% of it, is that evidence piece. So I've talked about evidence a lot. But this is where you want to demonstrate your interest, your enthusiasm for the subject, outlining your skills, your knowledge that are relevant to the course you're applying for. Now, how do you know what kind of skills and knowledge that you need to demonstrate? The easiest way, and the way I always suggest to students to do this, is have a look at the courses you're applying for, read the course information, almost like write a table. In the table, we have two columns, vertical columns, one that has skills, one that has knowledge. Along the side, you put the different courses, and you go through and you go, right, that course needs me to be, I don't know, a critical thinker. That course needs me to be good at analysing things. And whatever the skills might be, you go through and you write them all down. And once you've gone through it for all of your courses, you'll probably see a theme of the different skills and the different knowledge they're expecting you to have. What you then need to do is make sure that your statement is clearly outlining those skills and those knowledge with evidence. So that's the main kind of chunk, that 60%-ish in the middle. And then the end of your statement really crucially needs to be a strong conclusion, which basically wraps up and reaffirms all of the things you've included elsewhere in your statement. You outline your motivation, the reasons for applying. So that opening 30% is why you're applying. The middle chunk is your evidence, and then that last 10% to finish off is the conclusion. And it's really, really important that you have a strong conclusion. Lots of statements don't finish well, and that therefore leaves kind of a bad taste in the mouth of the reader. It's important as well to remember that you're trying to persuade somebody to make you an offer. You therefore need to be writing positively. Don't want to kind of draw too much on negative experiences. If you weren't able to do things such as work experience, for example, don't talk about that in a negative way, but talk about it in as positive way as possible. Put positive spins on things and include things which are going to sort of put you in a good light. If you're starting to write your statement today or starting to write your statement today, don't sit down and try and write it, but just start noting ideas. Get a blank piece of paper and write down why you want to apply for what you want to apply for, and then use that and kind of build up information as you go through. A couple of things not to do, in terms of your statement, is do not write in lists or bullet points. It's very tempting to want to demonstrate all the different things that you've done. But it needs to be continuous prose. Bullet points and lists just don't work. Don't leave it to the last minute. We know that the more applications that are left to the last minute, the more kind of mistakes we see in terms of spelling, grammar, and other mistakes. So make sure that you are giving yourself plenty of time. And with quotes as well, we know that people want to quote, famous academics or famous people related to the subject they're applying for. But remember that your statement is supposed to be personal to you. People reading the statement want to see what you think about a subject. They don't want you just to regurgitate other people's information. Remember that most of the people who read statements will be experts in the field. They therefore don't need you to tell them, what somebody famous has said about a particular subject. So use quotes sparingly. I would say probably 2 or 3 max. If you want to use them at all, you don't need to use them. Good statements don't have to have quotes. But if you're using them, make sure you're not taking up too much of your character count. Make sure it's relevant to what you're writing, and kind of use it to reinforce a point rather than to make a point. A couple of other top tips just to give you. Talked a lot about research at the beginning, and that is very much a deliberate strategy. If you do proper research, not only will you be more likely to choose a course which is right for you, you're going to be able to support a strong personal statement. The proper research you do will allow you to understand the skills, the knowledge, and the requirements the universities are looking for from their students. You need to remember that you're applying for an academic type course. You are applying for an academic course, and therefore your statement needs to have a strong academic focus. Even that 20% of extracurricular stuff should be linked to the academic demands of the course that you're applying for. If you're looking to apply for vocational type courses, you probably need to have a stronger focus than 80%, probably 90-95%. So kind of remember that. Evidence is absolutely key. If you don't provide evidence, your statement will not read well. It will not be well received. Be honest in your statement. Hopefully this goes without saying, but if you're not honest within your statement, it's going to cause you issues, particularly if you have to go and interview for a course. You need to be able to be prepared to back up anything you have in writing in a kind of face-to-face conversation with somebody. Important to use plain English when you're writing a statement. It can be tempting to get out the thesaurus and try and make yourself sound more intelligent, or try and write in a style which isn't comfortable to you. So just use plain English. Make sure that the message you're trying to get across comes across in your statement. A very easy and simple tip to help you do this is whenever you write something in your statement, read it aloud. When you read it aloud, how does it sound? Does it feel right? Maybe you record it, play it back to yourself. That will then help you kind of make sure that you are saying what you want to say. Talked about structure. Structure is absolutely important. If you don't have a structure, it's not going to flow, it's not going to be easy to read, and it's not going to be memorable. So make sure you're planning it, you're writing it, and you're happy with the structure. It's really not an easy thing to write the personal statement, and it's lots of people will approach it in different ways, and that's okay. The advice I'm going through today is just best practice advice and guidance. But if you have your own approach to doing things, that's okay. You can do it in any way that you want to. You're also not going to be able to write it in an afternoon or a week. You are going to have to write it, draft it. You're going to get people's opinions from it. And you're going to go back and forward and draft, redraft, proofread it. But remember this, there is no perfect personal statement. There is no perfect way to write it. It's very much a subjective approach, and you have to take responsibility for it and be happy with what you submit when you do submit. Now, one little kind of tool or tip that I always think is an easy way to remember writing an effective statement is the ABC rule. So if you're going to include an activity, an achievement, an assessment, attainment, an ability that you have, anything at all, it has to stick to this ABC rule. So great, you've got this activity or you've got this attainment to tell us about, but what benefit has it brought you? And crucially, how does it link to the course you're applying for? So, for example, it might be that you've been working as a part-time job whilst you're studying for your Access course. That has forced you to effectively time manage, your work and your sort of paid job, which links you to you will have to do when you get to university, because you have to time manage your time at university. Something as simple as that. Any A has to have a B and a C link to it. So remember that. Use the ABC rule. Can't go too far wrong. There's lots of resources on our hub, including the personal statement builder. So if you go onto the personal statement builder in the Ucas Hub, there's lots and lots of information, questions. You can even export drafts of your statement into a PDF. You can send it to people as emails as well. Just helps you to get kind of on there with it. There's also lots of other resources I wanted to point you in the direction of. So we've got our personal statement pages on ucas.com, information about how to start a statement, how to end it, some of the do's and don'ts which I've gone over, some more of the FAQs as well. We've also got information about hobbies. If you are going to be talking about things you do outside of the kind of academic setting, you need to make sure it's relevant. And there's other things there to support you in writing an effective statement. Okay, just wanted to, before I open up the floor to questions, I'll kind of check and chat in a moment, just wanted to summarize with some factors for successful applications that we see year in, year out, and then also some common mistakes which we see, which is worthwhile just going over. And I said, then I'll open up the floor to questions or to any comments that people might have. So without wanting to labour the point too much, I've talked about research right from the outset of the presentation. If you do proper research, you're going to be setting yourself up to make a strong application, to ultimately write a strong personal statement and hopefully receive offers from your chosen choices. When you're making your application, when you're thinking about where to apply, if you consider carefully the choices that you make, you have 5 choices. Maybe you could be really aspirational with 2 or 3 of them, be a bit more safe with 2 or 3, and maybe have a backup in terms of entry requirements if you wanted to. That's just one approach. Again, it's your application, it's your personal choice what you do. It's a right way to think about it. Mention the personal statement a lot. A strong personal statement can really be the difference between you receiving an offer or not. So thinking about your personal statement will really help you. You obviously don't write your reference, but a strong reference, again, will lead you to receive more offers. Mention the dates and the deadlines that the application cycle works around. Very important that you understand these, you're working towards these, and that you are making sure you submit your application on time, but not only submit your application on time, you also respond to offers and do what you need to do when you need to do it by. If you don't, it can lead to you not to missing out on a place which otherwise should be yours. Talking about plan B, really important that everybody has a backup plan, whether that be another university choice or another college choice, another course, or maybe it's to be something entirely different. Maybe it be an apprenticeship, maybe it be a full-time job. But having a plan B will just help you feel more confident. But also, if you then need to use your plan B, if you've got it written down, it's really going to help you feel as prepared as you can be. I've talked about some of these mistakes already, so I'm not going to dwell on this too much, other than just to kind of leave it there for you as a reference after the session. But some of the common mistakes that we see some people applying for courses they're just never going to meet the entry requirements for. Entry requirements are listed on our website for each individual course. If you don't have the required grades or the required subjects for those courses, in lots of cases you just won't be considered. So make sure you're looking at the entry requirements properly before you apply. If you have to take an admissions test for your course, make sure you understand what you need to do, when you need to do it by. If you don't, again, this can lead to you not receiving an offer. Qualifications play an important part of your application. Yes, you're making an academic application. You therefore need to make sure all of your academic history is clearly outlined in your application. It's important that you provide us with a proper email address. When I say proper email address, often we do see students applying with personal email addresses. Sometimes these email addresses can be, ones that they created when they're 12 years old, can be slightly immature sounding. So do, think about the email address that you're using. So we do recommend you use a personal one, but just make sure if it is a personal one, you are using an appropriate one. And all the other ones are just kind of practicalities around using the form. The new application form will hopefully help reduce these mistakes, but make sure you're understanding what you're ticking within the application form, what you're reading. So when you submit it, you are doing what you need to do. I've gone through the application process now, and so I'm going to go check in the questions section in a moment and address any questions or concerns that you might have. But please remember that we have a dedicated team of customer experience staff who are available all year round to support you in making your application. We don't work for universities, we don't work for the government, we are an independent charity helping you get access to higher education. So if you do have a question, pick up the phone, look us up on our website, ucas.com, or on any of our social channels. We're there, we put a lot of content out to support you in that informed decision making. So do reach out, anything you need help with, whether it be accessing your application, deciding what to apply for, or anything in between. Brilliant. So that kind of comes to the end of what I planned to say during the session. I'm very happy now. I've got a few moments, I think, for you guys to ask questions. Very happy to answer any questions that you might have about anything to do with anything I've covered or anything I haven't covered.
Thanks for that, Charlie. Yes, we'll just wait for anyone to pop any questions in there. Obviously, there is a slight delay between us and the stage, so if we just give it a couple of seconds, see if anything does come up. Oh, something just came through there.
Cool. Yeah. So it says, what was the C in the ABC rule? So C stands for course. So the ABC rule is if you're talking about something in your personal statement, whether it be an activity, an ability, achievement, an assessment, anything at all, it has to have a B and a C linked to it. So talk about an activity, what benefit has that taught you? What do you learn from it? And then crucially, the C, how does that link to the course you're applying for? So, it might be a part-time job. It might be you've been playing part of a sports team. You've learned communication skills, which will help you when you get to university. So anything you include has to have an A, a B, and a C attached to it.
I think we've come to the end then. I don't think there's going to be any other questions. So thank you again, Charlie. I think that was really informative, really helpful. If anyone does have any other questions, obviously Charlie shared some contact details there to get in touch with Ucas. So please do use that. We'll also be sharing all of today's presentations, because we've got one in a moment, on YouTube, so you can watch this again later if that's helpful. and we'll also find a way to share the presentation itself, so you can click on some of those links that Charlie's shared as well. Brilliant. Thank you very much, Charlie. And I'll just close your presentation. And yes, so we'll say goodbye now, but then we'll hopefully welcome Ben shortly. Okay, Ben, I'm going to add your presentation to the stage and then take it away. Okay.
Presentation visible, yeah?
Yes, now.
Ready to go?
Ready to go.
Cool. Okay, afternoon everybody. I hope you found that Ucas session helpful. Chock full of information, and sadly the trend's not going to stop. This is a session about student finance, and there is quite a lot to get your head around with student finance. Like I said, there's a ton of information, a ton of links and resources, but again, as with the Ucas slides, we will make them available at the end of the session, so please don't panic too much if I rush through some of this or some of it doesn't make sense as I'm going through it. So we're going to go through, just as a quick introduction, my name is Ben. I am from Student Finance England, part of the wider student loans company. And in this presentation, I'm going to give you a quick run through of the support that's out there when you enter higher education, how you go about getting it, some key messages about repayments, and then just at the end, just some throwaway stuff about budgeting and key messages if we have the time. So again, as mentioned, I am from Student Finance England, and what we do in the most simple, straightforward terms is provide financial support on behalf of the UK government to eligible students from England entering higher education in the United Kingdom. So the two main costs you have in higher education, no big surprise, are your tuition fees and your living costs. And at Student Finance England, we make help available to support students with both of those. There's a range of help available, which we'll go through during the slides, but it does depend on a few main things. Firstly, your course and where you live and study, household income for some students, and personal circumstances. And again, we'll cover those in a bit more detail. And just to let you know, the figures I'm going to show you are for the current academic year, the academic year that started this September, simply because the government haven't released the figures for the academic year starting next September yet, but we are expecting those in the next couple of weeks. We're not expecting any huge changes. We're just expecting the maintenance support and the supplementary support rates to rise in line with inflation. So again, you'll see some of the website resources where you can check for the latest information. Again, as mentioned, we're not expecting it to change too dramatically for next year's intake. So one of the main things we look at, and one of the main things that catches out students, is residency. So there are just a few tick boxes that students need to make sure they meet to be able to apply for our support. First off, have settled status, which means you can live in the UK without any home office restriction. You're a UK citizen, you've lived here for enough time to get indefinite leave to remain or indefinite leave to enter, etc., etc. To qualify for Sfe support, generally you need to be resident in England on the first day of the first academic year of your course and have been living in the UK for 3 years immediately prior to that date. If you are from the EU, EEA or Switzerland, then I'm sure you are sick to the back teeth of hearing about Brexit, but it's something that we've had to factor into our eligibility assessments as well. But if you are an EU, EEA or Swiss national, and you do have settled or pre-settled status through the EU settlement scheme, then you may still be eligible for support, but that will depend on the status you've been awarded and the time you've been living in the UK. And we also have a range of other residency categories which extend eligibility for student finance. And those include things like refugee status, if you're a stateless person, or you've been granted humanitarian protection by the Home Office. And there's a whole lot of information on that online, and it's all on gov.uk. You'll see that website flash up quite a lot when we go through the presentation. Also, in terms of entitlement, student finance isn't a bottomless pit. Generally, we make available support for the length of your first full higher education qualification up to degree level plus 1 year. So this example you'll see on screen is if you were starting a standard 3-year full-time degree. Basically, the formula is you're entitled to support for the ordinary duration of that course plus 1 additional year. So if you were doing a 3-year course, you'd have the funding for the 3 years in place, plus funding for 1 additional year. And that additional year could be if you start a course and find that you really hate it, or you fail a year and you need to resit it, then that's the sort of things that the extra year is there in place for. And we also have something in place called compelling personal reasons. So if you should fail a year of your course for a reason out with your control, it could be illness or bereavement, something else out with your control, a mental health condition, something like that, then again, we can potentially reinstate a year's support as well. But why is that important? It's important just to be aware of that, because like I said, student finance isn't an endless cycle or bottomless pit. So you can't keep restarting, and then the funding still be there. But also, if you have studied a higher education course in the past, then again, you will need to let us know that you've done that when you make your application to us, just so we can factor that into the calculation. And it is higher education courses that we talk about. So any college course or your access course, things like that won't count. If you have studied on something like a degree or a foundation degree or higher education, higher national certificate or diploma before, then you will need to let us know just so we can factor those in. If it's your first time entering higher education, there shouldn't be an issue, and your standard entitlement plus that 1 additional year of support should be there for you. In terms of the support you can get, 3 main things to be considering: your tuition fee loan, your maintenance loan, and the range of extra help that's out there for you. Tuition fees, you're probably all familiar with the headline figure. We're not expecting this to change for the coming academic year. But if you are studying a full-time course and approved fee cap higher education provider, they can charge you up to that £9,250 a year for your full-time course. But does that mean can you or can't you afford to go to higher education? One of the cold facts is if you are eligible for our support and apply for the tuition fee loan, you don't need to pay anything up front. If you did want to make the step of supplementing some or all of your tuition, that's entirely up to you. You can make those arrangements with the university if you want to, but about 97% of eligible students do take out the tuition fee loan. So you haven't got to worry about finding that money up front if you are eligible for the tuition fee support. We pay whatever you request directly to the provider on your behalf, and we pay it off in 3 installments across the academic year. The one slight caveat there is if you take a course at what's called an approved provider, or they used to be called private providers, they're not under the same regulations. Those providers are free to charge you whatever they want, but the maximum tuition fee loan you can access is up to 6,165. But all of the majority of the mainstream universities are in the approved fee cap category, so they should be under the 9250 regulations. The tuition fee loan does not depend on household income. The only box you need to tick is that you are eligible for it. So unlike any of the maintenance support, this isn't linked to what your parents or your partner or you earn. It's entirely there for you to access. And as I mentioned, we do pay the tuition fee loan directly to your university or college in installments across the 3 academic years of your course. You do need to reapply for your funding every year, but the hard work is done in year 1. And then when you enter year 2, year 3, maybe even year 4, it's then just a process of logging back into your online account, reconfirming the details, or letting us know if anything has changed. Moving on to the maintenance support. Now, maintenance loans are designed to help meet living costs. They're not there with any kind of guarantee to cover all of your living costs. So that is something you do bear in mind. The government do place no guarantee that a maintenance loan will cover everybody's living costs, but they are there to contribute and help out. That word eligible comes up again, but if you tick the same boxes for tuition fee loan, then you should be eligible for some of the maintenance loan. But the final amount you get will depend on household income and where you live and study. We'll come on to household income later in the slides, but the general principle is if the household income that we assess is under 25,000, then you should be eligible to apply for the full rate of maintenance loan, which is available to you. Maintenance loan, we do pay directly to students, and we pay that directly in each term. So as soon as you start the course and as soon as your university lets us know that you're on the course, we release that first payment then, which is something that we are just doing now for students who have just started their courses this year. And you'll get a payment after the Christmas break and a payment after the spring break. Both tuition fee loans and maintenance loans do need to be repaid, which again we'll cover later in the presentation. But the key thing to remember about repayments is you don't need to repay anything until you finish your course, you enter repayment, and then your income is up and over the relevant threshold that applies at the time. So I didn't mention what you get is linked to where you study. So the main rates we have, the parental home rate. If you're living at your parental home while you're studying, you're under what's called the parental rate. And as mentioned, these are just the rates for this year. So that would be 7987. The elsewhere rate, you live away from home and you study outside of London, potentially 9488 is this academic year. Then the London rate, you live away from home, you study at a London higher education provider, potentially up to £12,382 would be available to you. And there are different rates of maintenance loan available if you are entitled to benefits, which could be that you are a lone parent or you're entitled to disabled students allowance and have and get disability living support, etc., etc. Or if you're aged over 60, when you start your course, then there's a lower rate of maintenance loan available to you. But again, on gov.uk, when you go through the application form, it will flag up all of these different rates and flag up all of the different qualifying criteria. So in this chart here, hopefully in the first column, you will see the different rates available for a full year student. You probably notice one at the bottom there called overseas, and that is not if you choose to take a full degree at an international university. We don't fund that. We fund UK-based study. But if as part of your UK-based course, you get the opportunity to go and study overseas for an academic year or part of an academic year, then yep, for that period of eligible study overseas, you may qualify for the overseas rate of maintenance loan. So if you are doing something like travel or international business or international law, etc., or languages, then your university may very well have either a year abroad or a sandwich or placement year abroad. And during that year, again, you may qualify for the overseas rate of loan. In the second column, you'll see the maximum rate of loan. The third column, the non-income assessed rate. That is the amount you are guaranteed to get, providing you are eligible, not looking at anyone's household income. And the final column is the amount which will then be based on the household income details you provide as part of your application. So what is household income? I mentioned it a few times, and if any of you guys watch any of the Martin Lewis shows or subscribe to his blogs or look at the Money Saving Expert, you'll see he has quite a bee in his bonnet about communicating of household income. So I'm going to try my best to cover it as quickly as possible. What is household income? It's basically the income of any parent, step-parent, your parent's partner, wife, husband, or civil partner that you normally live with. And with student finance, as we covered in the slide previously, there is a threshold where some of the money is then dependent on household income and where some of it isn't. So when the household income reaches that certain level, the upper threshold we call it, students are only entitled to receive the reduced rate or the, the non-income assessed rate of maintenance loan. So for elsewhere rate, that's just over £62,000. For London rate, it's over £70,000. And for the parental home rate, that's over £58,000. But again, when you go through the application form, you'll see indicators about these rates. And then when we send you out your notification of entitlement letter, the calculations that you get will take into account all of these sums and all of these formulas that we need to do behind the scenes. And also, if your household income is over £42,875, then there's another contribution placed on, and that's called the assessed contribution. And that is the amount that the government estimate that any parent or sponsor that you have would then be able to contribute a certain amount towards your higher education. So just to let you know that when the sums are done, there are two main processes of means testing that it goes through. And if you read the How You're Assessed and Paid guide, some of our online guidance, you'll find some more details about how the means testing for loans actually works. But what that all means when it boils down is based on your household income level, that's how we work out what you're entitled to in terms of student finance. So again, as I mentioned, if the household income is under 25,000, you should be entitled to the maximum rate of maintenance, should you want it. Then the general principle is the higher the household income, the lower the maintenance loan until you hit those thresholds for the study location. And again, on gov.uk, we do have a student finance calculator, which will give you an estimate of your entitlement when you put in details of your tuition fee loan, household income, and some of the details about yourself. But we don't need to see household income for every student. We assess roughly 1.2, 1.3 million applications for student finance a year. And a big old slice of those are what we call dependent students. So they're aged under 25, they're still living at home with their parents or a parent. So on those bases, yes, we do need to see the household income details. But again, for another slice of students, we can deem them as being independent. And on that basis, we would then just look at their own circumstance or any household income of any partner or civil partner or cohabiting partner they may happen to be living with. But when it comes to independent, some of the main categories that we look at, if you're aged over 25, you're automatically deemed as being independent. So the only time we check out household income then is again as if you were in a partnership or a civil partnership or a marriage, etc. If you have a care of a young person, if you have children, then again you can be deemed as being independent. If you've supported yourself financially for 3 years before the start of your course, that's normally for students that are still living at home. But if they have supported themselves for 3 years away from home, they can prove that through utility bills, rental agreements, things like that, then again, that can be independent. Estranged from parents, and that means estranged as in no contact, and that will again need to be evidenced. And also, if qualify as a care leaver and have been looked after by a local authority, then again may fall into the category of being independent. And again, all of those categories are flagged up when you go through the application form for your student support. Moving on to the extra help.
Just to interrupt you slightly, we have had a few questions. So if I read you some of the questions, it might be a good time to answer those if you're happy to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think this is all in reference to how much tuition fee and obviously what will be assessed in that. So the first one I have here is I live at home with children and husband. Is that parental rate?
No, you'd be elsewhere. So it'd be elsewhere. And if you live with the husband, then when you do the application, they would just need to submit their income details. But no, parental home means you're a student and you live with your parents basically until you're over 25. But if you're living with a husband, then you'd be under the elsewhere rate alone.
Lovely, thank you very much. Then I've got my eldest son lives at home still. Is his income included in the household income or just mine and my partner's?
Just yours and your partner's. We won't look at children when we look at household income.
Lovely.
And again, for yourself, if you are a student and you're working, we don't need to see your household income either. We don't look at those. The only time we'll take a student's income into account is if you are getting a massive amount of money coming in through things like trust funds or rent through property of a room. Basically, it's what we call unearned income. Or if you are employed and your employer is releasing you but still paying you to attend the course, if that makes sense. Not if you're going to a course on your day off or in evenings or at the weekends, but if your employer is still paying you to attend your course. But if other than that, no, it'll just be the partner's income we'd look at.
Perfect. And then we have another question, which is my mum lives with me but is retired. Does her pension count as household income?
What we look at in terms of household income is anything taxable. So if that pension is subject to income tax and national insurance contributions, then yes, we will ask for the details. But what we actually do assess comes up when the application lands on our desk. If it is taxable, then yes, it would need to be declared as part of the application process.
What happens if you're on universal credit and my partner works full time?
The partner's income details we need to see. When it comes down to universal credit, that's not our decision to make. That all falls on Department for Work and Pensions. The general principle is if you are working full time, if you are studying full time, then yeah, if you become a full time student, that will affect universal credit. if you fall into the eligible for benefits category, which it sounds like you might if you're getting universal credit, you get the slightly higher rate of loan called the Entitled for Benefits rate. And when we send you out your letter, your notification of entitlement letter, when we assess you, they'll have a paragraph in it which will say that XYZ amount of your student loan needs to be disregarded from the Department for Work and Pensions when they reassess your benefits. But like I say, once you do that and you get your entitlement letter, you will need to make an appointment at the DWP or the job centre just to let them know you are going to be a full-time student, just so they can reassess you. But any reassessment they do will need to take into account that disregard amount that we that we put in place. So as I said, sadly, I can't tell you exactly how it will affect yours. That's up to the DWP to decide, but just be aware that if you become a full-time student, then it may very well affect your universal credit that comes in.
Lovely, thank you. And I'll just take this one last one, which is from Connie. Connie says, what rate is it for the independent student?
If you don't fall into the eligible for benefits, it will just be the elsewhere or the London probably. As I say, or slightly more if you fall into the eligible for benefits category. But there's not a special rate. It's just probably the elsewhere, because you're not going to be at parental home, I wouldn't assume. So it's not going to be that. It'll be the elsewhere or the London.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Ben. We'll continue with your presentation now. Thank you.
Right. Cool. Right. So again, just the extra support. And again, if you are mature students or looking at specific types of course, then this one might be of use to take some notes here. So again, there's a whole range of extra help for students. Some of it sadly does go unclaimed or maybe isn't communicated well enough. So some of it does require a little bit of research. First off, we have something called disabled students allowances. So if you have any long-term health conditions, mental health conditions, specific learning difficulties, make sure you do some research on and apply for disabled students allowances. Sorry, excuse me. And that takes into account, there's over 3,000 recognised disabilities, mental health conditions on the list that we look at. So it's some of the more obvious things like mobility difficulties or blindness or deafness, but also things on the autism spectrum, dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, all the other they're all on the list as well. So if you think you may qualify for disabled students allowances, do make sure you stick in an application for those. There is this year up to £25,000 worth of support available for disabled students, so it's definitely worth sticking in an application. And it could be that you get non-specialist medical help. It could be that you get specialist software to run on computers, assistive technology, things like that. There's a whole range of support available through DSA, so do make sure you check those out. If you have children or adult dependents, again, there's a whole range of grants available. From ourselves, there's a childcare grant, an adult dependence grant, and a parent's learning allowance. Those are means tested. So again, do make sure you spend a little bit of time researching those to make sure if you are eligible or not. But so if the childcare grant contributes towards your Ofsted registered childcare costs, and the adult dependence grant, if you have an adult that's financially dependent upon you and household income is no more than 3,796, then you may qualify for that. And the parents' learning allowance is just to contribute towards any other costs that parents of children may have while they study. So like I said, do spend some time checking those out. Again, all on gov.uk and our websites. If you study overseas as part of your course or go on a clinical placement, as well as the overseas rate of maintenance loan that I've mentioned, you may also qualify for a travel grant from ourselves. And there is a new UK scheme called the Turing Scheme. So again, you may qualify for some extra bursary help through the Turing Scheme if you are doing an approved overseas placement as part of your UK course. If any of you are thinking of studying in the NHS and doing something like nursing, midwifery, or any of the allied health professions, such as speech and language therapy, or dietetics or nutrition, etc., 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 then you may also qualify for additional help through the NHS Bursary service. Yes, the old bursaries that covered fees and living costs are gone, but the NHS over the last couple of years have introduced something called the Learner Support Fund. So that will give you a training grant. There's some additional childcare help through that as well. There's a hardship fund And if you do an underrepresented course, mental health nursing and a couple of other nursing streams are on that as well, then again, you may qualify for a whole range of extra help through the Nhs Bursary service. So again, if you're looking at any of those courses, do make sure you spend some time on the Nhs BSA website to find out what's on offer. And also bursaries and scholarships. Now, every university in the approved fee category has to submit what they call an access agreement to the Office for Students on an annual basis. And as part of that, they have to write in a bursary and scholarship offer. And bursaries could be linked to household income. Scholarships could be linked to the results you get, the qualification you're doing now, or if you're from a certain underrepresented group. And some of them can be worth thousands of pounds. So again, when you're doing your research, whether you're doing it now, when you submit your UCAS, just spend some time checking out the bursary sections on those websites. If you go to open days, again, just be sure to ask universities about their bursary and scholarship offer to see how you get it, can you get it, and how you go about applying for it. And if you do go on to then progress from your HE course to a postgrad, just be reassured, if you will, that we can also fund you if you go and do an eligible master's course or a doctoral course, because there are loans available to help with the postgraduate range of study as well. We are strapped for time today, so I won't spend too much time on those, but just be aware that they do actually exist if you do think about going into postgrad study. Applications. So again, 3 main steps. You apply, preferably online. We assess your application, and then the important part, you get paid. Quite frustratingly, each year, thousands of students apply for their loans late, which means that we are assessing them late, and in some instances, we are paying them late. So when they start their course, they may find that we haven't had time to turn their applications around, so they may be getting chased by their university for their first fees or their first accommodation payments. But we do try and assess applications as quickly as we can, but we do set some boundaries. So some of the key messages to make sure you get paid on time. First off, you don't need your confirmed place at uni or college to apply. So if you have 4 or 5 UCAS choices that you make, one of those is probably going to be your first choice. You can stick that down on your student finance application so we can get on with the hard work of doing all the assessment, all of the processing, and getting everything ready to be paid. If at any stage you change your mind, all you need to do is log back into your online account and let us know the new course details at a later date. Evidence. We do need to see evidence from you guys to support your application, or from parents or partners to support their household income. We need to get that right the first time round as well. And quite importantly, spend some time reading the terms and conditions of your student loan before you submit your application. If you do apply online, I think you get presented with it 3 or 4 times. So you've got plenty of time to have a quick scan through it. And if you don't do it then, after you submit your application, please do go back and have a look at the T's and C's, because it will let you know about repayments, what you need to do in terms of keeping in contact with us, what happens if you go overseas, etc., etc., etc. So it's just important to spend some time scanning through that. And in terms of the application window, the service generally opens in the spring and it closes in the May. So it's the 21st of May this year for students who are starting this university this September. And I think we're aiming towards February time next year to open the application. Again, if you follow us on any of our social media channels, we'll be sending out updates. When we say deadline, it's not a deadline. You do have after that to apply for your loans. But like I said, we want to make sure we can pay you on time, so we promote applications as early as we possibly can. So evidence. If you are a UK national and you do have a current valid passport, you shouldn't need to send us anything. Just bang your passport details in on the application form and we can verify those with the passport agency. If you don't have one, original birth certificate might be required. Or if you're not a UK national, then we might be asking for things like a non-UK passport. And if you're from the EU, EEA or Switzerland and you have a status through the EUSS, then we'll be asking for your share codes as part of the application process. University and course, so we know where you're going and can assess you for the right amount of loan. Bank account details, national insurance numbers, just so we can pay you the maintenance. We can assess you without those things, but we won't be able to release any payments to you if we don't have a bank the account to pay them in. And yes, they do need to be yours. We can't pay them into anybody else's account. So it couldn't be a family member's or a partner's bank account. It will need to be in your name. And then for parents or sponsors, again, the easiest way for them to apply is online. So when you get to the end of your section, you'll be asked to nominate the relevant parent or sponsor. We'll send them an email. They can follow that link, and then using your customer reference number, we can then match up the accounts, and they just then go through the application, give us a breakdown of all of their taxable earned and unearned income and their national insurance numbers. And again, we verify all those details with the tax office, and also details of any children that you do have. Yes, it triggers the application for the childcare grants, but also if you do have children then that are studying, then again, we can potentially look at applying a disregard to the household income that we assess as well. And also an important point to note, the household income is assessed using the tax year that ends before you go to university. That's just so we can do all the details. And if at any stage the household income that we assess decreases, so your parent or your partner may be on furlough, they may have to go work part-time, worst comes to worst, they may become unemployed. And if the household income decreases by at least 15%, then we can assess what we call a current year income assessment. So you can potentially be assessed for a higher rate or maintenance loan if that happens. Again, the website, gov.uk, we are a government agency. Gov is our website, so do bear with it. All the information that we've covered today is on there. But also because we are unbelievably cool and down with the kids at Student Finance England, we are all over the internet and social media. So we do have a presence on the Student Room, Facebook, Twitter, Ucas, YouTube. The YouTube channel is actually pretty good. There are short, informative films on there that cover pretty much anything you can think of. Residency, ID, applications, evidence, repayments, childcare, disabled students allowance, you name it, there's probably a film on our YouTube channel that you will find useful if you have any questions. And then moving on to repayments. So we'll have a quick look here at the facts, the figures, and then the interest. So some of the key facts about student loan repayments and how they work include, and we're looking here at Plan 2. So if you've taken out an advanced learner loan for your Access Diploma, you are Plan 2. If you're then going to take out an undergraduate loan for your foundation degree, your HNC, your HND, whatever you're going to take next year, you will be Plan 2. And some of the key messages about that are you won't have to make any repayments until your income is up and over the set threshold, which until April next year is £27,295 annually, or £2,274 monthly, or £524 a week. It's important to note that it's not just the annual threshold that's in place. Yes, that is the key indicator, but if you are in a job and you're earning under the threshold, you might be thinking, great, I'm not going to be repaying my student loan this year. But if you are working in a job which gives you bonus payments, or you pick up an extra shift, etc., and in a week or a month you go up and over that threshold, you will make a repayment in that week or that month. But at the end of the tax year, if your salary doesn't equate out to 27,295, you could apply to us for a refund for whatever you've repaid in that month or that week if you want to, or you could just leave it in place. It's entirely up to you. And hopefully you'll see at the bottom that the Plan 2 thresholds currently rise annually in line with average earnings increases or inflation. Previously, last year, it was 25,575. This year, it's jumped to 27,295. And unless the government changed the policy, we're expecting to see that threshold continue to rise in line with those average earnings increases each year. When do you start to repay? If you study a full-time course, you do what we call entering repayment the April after you complete, leave, or withdraw from that course. So let's say you finish a course in the May or June of one year, you don't repay anything until the following April anyway, and then it's still linked to what you earn. What do you repay? For undergrad loans, it's 9% of anything that you earn up and over that threshold. And if you are employed, the deductions will be made automatically through your pay when you get paid. So that's why you give us the national insurance numbers. when you get paid, HMRC will deduct your student loan repayment as and when it comes out. So when you get your wage slip, you'll say income tax, national insurance, student loan. You shouldn't need to do anything to set up your own repayment process. If you are self-employed, you do it through PAYE, but the option is there if you're wanting to make voluntary repayments, lump sums, all that kind of thing. But other than that, you'll just make the 9% through PAYE, as most other people do. Something that's quite unique about a student loan is the fact that if any stage your income drops to below the threshold, your repayments are suspended. So you could be earning over the threshold and then you decide to take a break to travel the world. Let us know if you do that, just so we can adjust your repayments accordingly. You may take a break to write your memoirs. You may take a break to raise a family. Worst comes to worst, again, you might be unemployed for a period. During any of those periods when you're not earning over the threshold, your repayments are suspended. And there is that 30-year write-off period placed on your student loan. And that 30 years starts when you enter repayment, i.e. the April after you finish or leave your course, and will then keep on ticking down even during any of those periods when you're not earning over the threshold. So there is a good chance you may not repay everything that you borrow. Depending on what publication you read, they estimate that somewhere between 70 and 83% of students will never repay everything they borrow. So like I said, there is no pressure on you repaying everything you borrow, but this is kind of how the system pans out if you are employed and you are earning. So just a quick look at how it works. So like I said, 27,295 is the current threshold. So if you're earning under that, you're not going to be repaying anything. Based on an example from a marketing department, if you're earning 30 grand, your 9% is going to be deducted from 2,705 because that's what you're earning over the threshold. So your monthly repayment based on a salary of £30,000 a year will be £20 a month. And I mentioned it a couple of times. If you do go to live and work overseas for more than 3 months, then you do need to let us know just so we can say where you're going, what you're doing, and if we need to set up an overseas repayment plan for you. And that would just be based on 9% of the earnings over the income thresholds for the country that you are living in. Interest, not the easiest thing in the world to communicate because it's a variable interest rate on Plan 2, but I will certainly try my best. So these are loans and they do attract interest. For Plan 2, the interest rate varies and interest goes on as soon as the first payments are released to you. The rates for Plan 2, while you're studying until you enter repayment, the interest is added at the rate of retail prices index plus 3%. The retail prices index changes once a year and it's set using the figure from March, which is applied in September. So as of last March, the rate was 1.5% and that was applied in this September and that will last until next year. Then when you enter repayment, the interest rate changes and it then becomes linked to what you earn. And the rate charge will vary from just RPI until RPI plus 3. And the thresholds this year, 27,295. Under that, it's just RPI. Then it goes up on a sliding scale until you earn over 49,130. And then it'll be back up to the maximum of retail prices index plus 3% again. We do have an online repayment service. So once you do, well, when you're actually on your course, and particularly when you graduate from your course, you'll be able to use your login details to check your online repayments. So that your balance will be on there, your loan plan types will be on there. You'll be able to tell us if you've gone overseas, make lump sum repayments, switch to direct debit in the last 2 years of your repayments. All those things you can actually manage online. Particularly important to keep your eye on the balance, just so you understand what it is and what interest rate is being applied. And again, gov.uk has a page that's dedicated to student loan repayments. Something that I do need to bring your attention to talking about interest, and it would be remiss of me if I didn't. So as mentioned, generally it is linked to retail prices index plus 3. We've just coming out of a pandemic, which I think has beaten everybody up, including interest rates. So what we've had to do until the end of this year at least is apply caps to the maximum rate of interest that we can apply to Plan 2 and Plan 3 postgraduate student loans. So it's not something you necessarily need to worry about too much, but it's just so you know that these kind of things are going on behind the scenes, and the student loan system does move in line with the market rate that is applied to student loans. So you're not getting unfairly penalized at the moment by having an interest rate applied to a loan which is over and above the rate that is prevailing on the market. If you are super interested in interest, hey, you can go and find out about this, but just to let you know, it is a reactive system, and we're taking into account the sort of the state of the economy and the state of the market at the moment. Right, something which may be a bit more relevant to you guys, if you are studying and access to HE diploma at the moment, and you have taken a advanced learner loan for it, then you may very well find that you're going to be in a position, once you successfully complete your higher education course, that we'll be able to write off the outstanding balance for your advanced learner loan once that is done. So to be eligible for the write-off, you need to be eligible for the tuition fee loan support from us, and also studying what would be a funded course, and successfully complete that qualification that was eligible for our funding. So it's pretty much anything you could think of when it comes to a designated higher education qualification. HNCs, HNDs, foundation degrees, honours degrees, those all fall into the family of designated higher education qualifications. So if you complete one of those and you have an advanced learner loan for your Access diploma, you may very well find that we'll be able to write off the balance for your advanced learner loan. In terms of the process, so what we'll write off is the outstanding balance, which may be everything you've borrowed. It may be everything you've borrowed plus any accrued interest, or if you have made any repayments, it might be slightly less, but anything that is outstanding is what gets written off. What we won't do then, again, as I mentioned, so if you have completed your Access and you have been making repayments off your student loan, or you made any voluntary repayments off of your advanced learner loan, we can't refund those, but I say any outstanding balance moving forwards can be. It's an automated process, so the only time you would really need to tell us that you've successfully completed your HE course is if you don't take a student loan from ourselves. You still need to be eligible, but if you don't take a loan from ourselves and successfully complete, you will need to let us know after you finish the HE course. But if you do receive your tuition fee loan and your maintenance from us, what we do is, once you complete your HE course, we will do a sweep of every student that completes, go back and see if they received an advanced learner loan, go back and see if that advanced learner loan was from Access course. And if all of the boxes are ticked, then we will write off the balance and write out to you to let you know as and when this has been done. It's not an instant process, so don't expect it as soon as you finish your degree, the advanced learner loan will disappear. We just need to get the information through to us, so it does take a couple of months to do it, but be reassured it will happen. And my final few slides, just some throwaway stuff about budgeting. I'm not going to preach to you because I'm sure that you are probably much better budgeting than I am. It's more just to kind of flag up some useful websites and also some costs that you may think of, you probably haven't thought about. Probably most of them, a lot of them make sense: books, study materials, accommodation, phone, internet, insurance, things like that. But like I said, it was just to sort of flag up some budget calculators and other resources. There's an awful lot out there, but I quite like the one on Save the Student. It's quite a independent budget calculator, and a few independent reports they have run as well. So quite good resources on there. Some university websites will have them as well. Ucas will have things about budgeting and money management. So again, if you are a younger student perhaps and it's your first time moving away from home, it's just important to get your head around some of those things. And some of those reports also flag up some quite eye-opening details for students. Like this one, which I saw this morning, the average UK student will spend £810 a month, and that kind of just breaks down the main costs. So again, some of it's sort of some good research and some quite eye-opening stats and resources out there. Where students fund their studies, thankfully maintenance loan does still feature in the top 3, but also things like part-time work. And as you go down the list, some I'm not going to say less advisable, but maybe less viable sources of income coming in through things like gambling and commercial or payday loans and a few other bits and pieces there. And also, again, they speak to a lot of students. There are, again, quite a few worrying and eye-opening facts and figures here. So 43% of students felt they weren't made aware of the funding options. I hope you don't consider yourselves those, because from talks like today and the support you get, also the websites that are out there, there is an awful lot of information about student loans. 2 out of 5 don't understand their loan agreement. Ask a question. There's no such thing as a silly question when it comes to student finance. So if you've got any questions about loan payments or repayments, ask us or ask an advisor. Just make sure you are confident about student loans before you apply for them. 52% worry about loan repayments. Remember, there's always linked to what you earn and not what you owe. So hopefully that quells some of the fears about repayments. And also 68% don't know the interest rate. Totally understandable. It can be quite complex. Obviously, we update the websites every year, and you can also monitor those on your online repayment portal when you log into it and have a look. My final slide is just some key messages to remember. First off, when it comes to research, make sure you get your head around all the support that's out there for you. That's both the loans from ourselves, the childcare support, the disabled students allowances, the NHS support, those bursaries, those scholarships. They can all help you make the right university or college choice for the right reasons. Being swayed by one that's slightly cheaper that you end up hating after 6 months might not be the right decision when you're going to be there for 3 years, 4 years, maybe even longer. So it needs to be the right fit for you. When it comes to applying, do it online, do it on time. You don't need to wait for those confirmed offers. Fingers crossed, next January, February, we'll be opening the application cycle for next year. So again, just check out the websites and our social media channels for those details. When it comes time for repayments, again, remember, not until you earn over the thresholds, and even then, they are always based on what you earn and not what you owe. Any more questions at all?
Hi, Ben. There is one question. And again, this is talking about the loan itself and what people can expect. Someone's asked, my mum doesn't work. She has disability. My stepdad works, but part-time, but has a war pension. Would this affect it? I'm aware that might be a bit of a complex question and that might have to be referred to email, but do you have any advice there?
It just all depends on the details. I mean, we just still look at this with the household incomes that we look at is exactly the same thing. I mean, I'm not an expert on war pensions and whether that's taxable or not, but what they would do is just declare the details when they go through. So both the mum and the dad on the sponsored part of the application, there's just boxes to fill in details for all the benefits. And then we just need to see what's taxable, what's not, what can be disregarded, what can't. So a lot of benefits, if they aren't deemed as taxable income, will just be disregarded anyway. So I can't advise you on how it's going to affect it until you stick an application in. But it's just anything taxable is just the key thing that we look at when we run the assessments.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. Well, Ben, that's been incredibly helpful and very insightful. And as Ben has said, do contact Student Finance. No question is a bad question. It's better to ask than to go into things blindly. So thank you very much for that, Ben. That's been really helpful.
Yeah, so it definitely is. And also, I did mention our student room page on there. If you've ever used it, there's student blogs on there. So you might very well find that someone's already asked us a question you're thinking of. So again, it's just a useful source of some information. And also our social media advisors are also there on a daily basis answering questions, sometimes in real time. So there's always a route to get through to us. Phone-in's not always the best option, particularly if you are doing it round about now when it's a busy time. You may find there's quite a long wait time. So do check out the website, social media, our zone on the student room, got zone on Ucas as well. There's YouTube videos. I said a whole bunch of information about student loans. But again, as mentioned, if you've got anything that's bugging you about it, don't sit on it. Come and try and find us or check out any of the resources online.